There's one group that is racing ahead, and it's not just a competitive advantage. It is helping them see a future that the other group literally cannot envision. They were deeply curious, they were extremely humble, and they were brave enough to let go of whatever power and status and titles that they have claimed and be a beginner again.
Anybody else have work up in the air and curious about what the future holds, maybe even looking to reinvent themselves? Then join in. Let's do this. Welcome back into Reinvention, my friends. And today we have another Reinvention master on the line. And I'm really excited about this conversation because whether we like it or not, we are living through one of the biggest shifts in the history of the world and in work, okay? Every day we're hearing about AI, automation, and how entire industries are being transformed. And some people see it as an enormous opportunity. Others see it as uncertain. But most people are somewhere in the middle, right? Trying to figure out what all this means for their careers, their businesses, and their future. Now, the truth is that technology has always changed the way we work. But what feels different this time is the speed. Okay, the question isn't whether change is coming. The real question is, how do we adapt? How do we stay relevant? And perhaps most importantly, how do we reinvent ourselves before circumstances force us to? That's why I'm excited about today's conversation. My guest is Nikki Barua. She's an AI reinvention expert. That's right. She's using the word. I love it. She's an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and she co-founded Flipwork, which we're going to talk about today. And for more than 25 years, she's helped some of the world's most recognizable organizations navigate all kinds of transformation and large-scale change. What really caught my attention is that Nikki doesn't see AI as simply a technology story. Okay, she sees it as a human story. Her work focuses on helping leaders and organizations understand how human creativity, human judgment, and human experience can work alongside AI to unlock entirely new possibilities. So today, I want to jump into tactics. I want to discuss with Nikki where the rubber's meeting the road right now, and just have an honest conversation about what this means for individuals trying to navigate an increasingly uncertain future. So before we jump into all this good stuff, Nikki, welcome to the show.
Todd, thank you for inviting me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, really excited for this. You have a ton of experience in change management and what's happening on the ground. And over the past 2.5 decades, I just want to jump in and give a little background for our listeners. You know, you've advised global brands and enterprise leaders on digital transformation, organizational change, workforce evolution, and you've also created the People Squared framework within your company, which challenges the idea that organizations must choose between moving fast with AI and investing in people. And we want to talk about, and your work focuses on how, like we said, creativity and wisdom and what you call agentic scale can work together to create lasting and competitive change and advantages even. And so, Nikki, let's just jump into it right now, okay? Because you're also using the word reinvention like we are. What does reinvention actually mean to you? And why is it becoming such an important skill right now, not only for companies, but for people?
Yeah, that's the most important topic anyone should be focused on right now. So your show is right on point in terms of your focus on reinvention. But let's take a step back and just go back to, all of these decades of change that people and organizations have faced, right? We've seen the internet era, we've seen mobile and cloud and social media, and all of these technologies that fundamentally disrupted how we learn, how we work, how we collaborate, how we communicate. And every phase of tech disruption has led to something different and mostly something bigger and better for society. The difference in the past versus what we're facing today is the speed and scale of change. We've never had to adapt this fast, and we've never had this kind of critical mass adoption this quickly, right? And it's fundamentally abnormal for people to adapt to change at this kind of pace. We're just not designed for it. That's the challenge that we're facing. What we're seeing in companies is companies are investing in the technology. They're getting those ChatGPT licenses, the Claude licenses, Copilot everywhere. All of that is happening. So the investment in technology is there, but the investment in people is lagging behind. So we are truly facing what I call the exponential divide of technology racing ahead and people getting left behind. And Todd, that is not a great future for any one of us to face, right? So that is what Flipwork was founded on is our mission is to close that divide. And how can we help people advance as fast as the technology? And that's not going to happen by simply learning the technology. That's not going to happen by just prompting AI. That's not going to change how you fundamentally think, work, and learn, right? You have to reinvent. And what reinvention means in practical terms is you have to unlearn the old way and you have to adopt an entirely new way. And that's the biggest challenge for people and for organizations, because that's threatening. It's not just about adding something new to, another feather to a cap. It's letting go. It's being willing to disrupt yourself completely. It's turning things upside down. And that is not just threatening, but it's also risky in many ways. And what really gets in the way of reinvention is people just don't know what they're supposed to do. They're open to it. They just don't know what they're supposed to do. And they don't have a structured way of going from point A to point B. So that's really the challenge for both individuals and organizations at this moment.
When you talk about reinvention, the way that you framed it is that the delta and the challenge right now is with people aren't being developed fast enough, and that really needs to be closed, that gap.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about the development of people in conjunction with the emerging technology and AI, meaning that people need to fuse their wisdom and their work with AI? Let's get a little bit more about what you're talking about here, because developing people could mean a whole myriad of things. From your standpoint, you're saying, no, like we need to accept and adopt this technology and we need to move forward with it. And that's what will close the gap. Am I saying that correctly?
Absolutely. What's actually happening right now is companies are deploying AI training. It's one size fits all, like here's how you use Claude or here's how to use this tool. All of that training emphasizes the technology, and it does nothing to change how someone thinks, how they work, how they've been operating on autopilot for years, the skills that they've learned, the experience that they've developed. The right way to do this is thinking of it as co-evolution. How can humans and machines co-evolve in the same direction together, where we complement each other, where you have to be willing to let go of the things that you might have done for years and you were very good at, but now there's no way for you to compete with the machine. AI is going to do it faster, better, cheaper than you can even comprehend. Let it go. Let AI do that. And then focus on the things that a machine can never replace, that only humans can do. Your creativity, your relationship skills, the judgment from years of being in the front lines, the context that you have about your business, your industry, or your customers. Those are the things that only you have. It's earned experience, it's earned trust. That kind of thing is what you want to double down on. And so one way, very simple way to think about it is if you look at your calendar and think about pre-AI, what occupied 70 to 80% of your time every week on your calendar? And is that truly irreplaceable? If it's not, if it's the kind of thing that any advanced AI model could do, then you need to think about how you release that time and reallocate it to higher value activity. Simply put, that's the outcome you want to aim for. And look, that's a win-win situation, right? Because you're getting the highest form of leverage. And you're also making yourself truly irreplaceable and truly valuable, because you're doing the thing that only you are designed to do. You're operating in your zone of genius and you're getting the leverage of the machine. And that's what we call people squared. It's, people plus machines amplifying the best of each other. And with that, you become exponentially more capable and truly irreplaceable.
I heard you say something interesting in one of your interviews, that people aren't afraid of AI. You have some data around this. They're more afraid of reinvention, or the way that I hold it is they're afraid of change, just changing the way that they operate in the world and not the technology itself. Is that correct? Did you say something to that? And what does that actually mean in terms of what's the best way forward?
Yeah, look, there's a media narrative that's been going on about how people are anti-AI, they're afraid of AI, and they're afraid AI is going to take over their jobs. The reality is, and this is based on our proprietary diagnostic, Flip Factor, where we have data across thousands of people around the world, multiple industries, and all of that. And what we found is that the fear is not about people against machines. The fear is really lack of clarity of what am I supposed to do differently now that I'm competing with the machine. Right? That lack of clarity, the lack of structure around what I'm supposed to do is the missing piece. And anecdotally, I think all of us can, look at our own experience in using AI or people we know around us. Most people get pretty excited, right? Like you use AI and you're like, wow, this is so cool. Like, look at all the things I can do. Look at how much time I can save and how it's such a great companion for me to strategize with or solve problems with. People are generally excited about the capability of AI. What they're just confused about is, who am I in this new age? What am I supposed to let go of? What am I supposed to now build competency around? And what does that actually look like? And the biggest bottleneck is actually identity. What they struggle with is, if I build this competency and if I achieve this status and got this power, this big title, from 20, 25 years of doing my job and I'm the best at it. And today there's a machine that can just do it, or do 80% of my job in a fraction of the time. It threatens your identity. You start to question, well, what's my value then? In some cases, we're also finding that it clashes with people's sense of core values. There is an example that we were working with a large company, and one of their senior leaders was actually like the slowest to adopt AI, even though they were from the tech department, the engineering division. And the reason wasn't because they had any issues with AI. The reason was, this is someone who rose up in their career working really, really hard. And so industriousness and hard work and effort was a core value, right? This is someone who was like, hey, I'm always first in, last out. Like, I got promoted because I'm the hardest working person on the team. Well, now when I use AI, I feel like I'm cheating. So I'm not going to use it because it clashes with my core values. Now, those are things that are genuinely human problems. It's got nothing to do with the tool. It's got nothing to do with infinite intelligence. It is entirely a human problem to solve. So the challenge that every leader and every organization needs to focus on right now is, how to even discover where your people are. What are those hidden bottlenecks that are not visible to you? And how do you meet them where they are and help them become orchestrators with AI as their partner, instead of just deploying one-size-fits-all training and throwing more AI licenses and tools at them?
Yeah. Okay. I love it. And I see why. Before we got on, you had said that you love listening to our podcast and that it's been really valuable. And now I kind of get it. You're talking about some of the most important things that we talk about on here, which is identity.
Yeah.
Like that to me is one of the things that's really in question, right? Whether you're working at a company right now that is going through a lot of change, or you're looking out into the future and perhaps looking for some form of transition, or just looking for a variety of ways to kind of create a secure and safe future for yourself. The thing that's really happening is a question of, well, who am I? Like, who are we? This is a big inflection point, a big awakening, for lack of a better word, around what do I do every day and what am I working towards, right?
Look, the secret to all reinvention is ultimately changing your identity. And that's why it's so hard. It's sort of like weight loss, right? The formula is pretty simple. Fewer calories in, more calories out. But then you wonder, well, why do people struggle with weight loss? Because knowing what it takes is not the same as actually being able to do it. And so identity shift is the same challenge, which prevents people from reinventing. And that's always been the case. It's not specific to AI. It's just that AI is challenging identity at such a biological and systemic level that becomes even more threatening. And you don't have the luxury of time to dwell on it anymore. You're either moving identity and reinventing, or you're getting left behind.
And we're doing this, right? Like, a lot of what my work is about is speed, realizing what's happening right now so that way they can align with the future that is emerging, that a lot of this is out of our control, right? So let's jump into it, because I'm actually curious around the identity piece. In the work that you do, how do you even begin to navigate that deeper question when you're working with companies and they don't want to talk about like individual identity per se, right? But this is just what's being confronted right now. So what are the most important tenets for you in terms of helping individuals really face their identity questions and then navigate a process to actually get to the other side where they can feel good about themselves in the future? Talk to me about what your process is like on that.
Yeah, so simply put, the way we think about it is, for organizations to transform, they can't reinvent until the teams reinvent. Teams have to fundamentally change how they work. And teams can't change how they work until the individuals within those teams are willing to shed past beliefs, behaviors, and mindsets and adopt a new way of working. So our entire philosophy around organizational transformation begins with individual transformation, and we ladder up from there. The individual changes, teams change, and therefore the business and company changes. And so in that process, we start with the diagnostic where everyone in the company takes that diagnostic, and that allows us to identify, is the gap between the environment in which they operate, or is the gap in the individual's own readiness? And we map that against 4 different archetypes. And those archetypes then give us a window into understanding what is their profile, what is their likely behavior, and what kind of support do they need in order to reinvent themselves. From the diagnostic, we take them through an 8-week sprint. And during that time, they go through a very personalized experience on our platform. So we call it Flipwork OS. It's sort of the operating system for upgrading humans alongside the upgrading of the technology. And so in Flipwork OS, they are essentially the diagnostic personalizes the entire reinvention journey. So every single person gets a completely personalized experience instead of one size fits all. And it takes them through a step-by-step reinvention process, starting with identifying what identity are they latching onto. Because a lot of people, if you ask them, well, what is your identity? Can you define your identity? They can't name it. They might give you their title or the functional area that they have expertise in to say, oh, I'm a VP of marketing. Well, that's great. What does that actually mean in terms of the identity, right? Like maybe you take pride in being, someone who's very methodical or someone who is very creative, whatever that might be. We first get them to name that identity and identify which parts of it are resourceful and which parts of it are unresourceful in the AI age. And then take them through a systematic process of shedding that, identifying their zone of genius that alongside AI actually becomes even more valuable in the market, and then taking them through a process of not only learning the technology, but building with it. And here's why the building part matters. For senior leaders, the higher up, as you keep rising up in your career, what you're doing is essentially going further away from execution. You get paid to make decisions. You get paid to have accountability and ownership over high stakes environments. AI is not something you can truly develop intuition around by reading a brief about it. You gotta build. There is no other way around it. It's kind of like, would you really want to, go into the surgery room if your surgeon has read a whole bunch of medical textbooks but never actually operated? Senior leaders are facing that dilemma right now, which they can speak very fluently about AI and its implications and the right strategic transformation, but many of them have never actually built with it. And so during this 8-week sprint, they're learning about themselves, they're learning about the technology, they're building with it, but they're also discovering how the combination of their own unique zone of genius alongside the power of AI actually amplifies and creates this agentic scale. And in that period, what we find is it's the doing that shifts the identity. It's not just knowing the identity and knowing what it needs to be. It's the doing that gives the evidence and the belief that gets set in. And then they start to see that, oh, I can see how shifting, letting go of the old identity, adopting a new identity is actually more valuable. I'm seeing the results. And within an 8-week process, we find that on average, they release about 40% of their capacity weekly. Like imagine having 40% more time every week. And then they redeploy that toward higher value things that machines can do. They also see team innovation go up. And so they start to get these like really hard metrics within just 8-week period. And that starts to seal the new identity more and more. And so that's kind of the process we take them through. And we found that hands down, the biggest difference, the shift that happens really comes down to the doing.
Fascinating. You're like reshaping humans, right? Like within corporate environments, from an individual level that then gets together in teams, that then gets together into the larger organization, right? And it's very interesting the way that you're doing it. And I know there's a focus on the actual doing and the building and using the tools. But I just have to ask, what do you see as some of the qualities of the people that come out of your program and the people who are best set to win the future right now? What are they doing? Obviously, they're fully adopting and they're building with. What other qualities are you seeing emerge from this program and others that are just, they're doing it right? These people are set up to be successful no matter what happens. Talk to me about some of these values. My listeners want to know that, like we're changing. It's obvious that we're changing in a big way, but where's it going and how do we then align with these values quicker?
That's such a great question. I'm glad you asked it. There's something we discovered after going through this process with a variety of clients, at first we were actually focused a little bit more like mid-career level in terms of kind of deploying this program at companies. And what we found was, there was definitely great results and transformation and all of that, but they were hitting up against sort of resistance or ignorance from the top. A lot of theoretical knowledge, but not like hands-on. There was an absence of agentic leadership at the top. And so we actually started to shift our focus towards more of the C-suite, even board members, and started going more senior. And we saw almost like two archetypes very clearly emerge. And that really gets to the heart of like, what are the values that set you up for success? There were those that were sort of really digging into their power and status and proof of what they'd already done, right? Like they've made it. They've got nothing more to prove to the world. At this point, they're just protecting the turf, right? And interestingly, it was a lot of Gen Xers. It was people in their 50s, potentially early 60s and all of that. And they've rightfully, sort of assumed that high status, right? Because they've worked really hard and they're the best at their game, best in the industry. So they've gotten to the top. But there's a little bit of, I know how to do this. I know how it's been done. I've got a playbook that's super proven and I'm sticking to it. Sure, I'm going to use AI, but it's essentially using AI like a faster Google, a faster search engine. And that's about it. And then there was another sort of a completely different archetype, which is someone who was just totally curious, really, really humble with a beginner's mindset, who's willing to be a rookie, who's like, I don't care if I knew it all. I'm willing to throw away the old playbook. I'm willing to just figure it all out, roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty. And that takes a lot of bravery. It's not easy for someone at the top of their game to be willing to literally be an apprentice again. That quality, hands down, is the winning combination. So to me, it was very clear, and the data showed it. Like those were the ones that just raced ahead of their executive peers. They were deeply curious, they were extremely humble, and they were brave enough to let go of whatever power and status and titles that they have claimed and be a beginner again.
It reminds me of, we had Bill Gurley on the show, who's the legendary investor from Benchmark. Billionaire, right? And he wrote a book that we interviewed him about. And it was fascinating because that's exactly what he was like. It was like being on the phone with this like really massively successful man in his 50s, or I don't know how old he is, but that was like a child, like so curious and completely humble and just wanting to play with the tools and wanting to learn it and wanting others to play with it. And like, that was the energy that I saw.
That's it.
Yeah. And like, I saw it. I'm like, oh my God, like I got off the line. I can't believe that he's like that. He was clearly in that second group, what you just shared. So I love that. You have something to say on that as well?
Yeah, no, I was going to say is that it's so clear that between the first group and the second group, the difference is exponential. There's one group that is racing ahead, and it's not just a competitive advantage. It is helping them see a future that the other group literally cannot envision. To me, it's sort of a personal Blockbuster to Netflix moment, right? You can be very damn sure of your worldview, and so you're going to hold on to that. And then there's another group that may be sort of the incumbent, if you will, or the upstart that is just willing to, be a novice and learn again and try on anything and just move really fast. And they're able to see a worldview that literally is invisible to the other group, but they're racing towards building that. And I think that we're going to see it play out in leadership. We're going to see it play out in executive teams, and we're certainly going to see it play out in companies. And that's why I think for established companies, being able to transform your culture and unlock those kind of values within your company, within your organization is so critical.
Yeah. And I just want to go back to something that you had said before we hopped on the call. And you had said, just to corroborate what we're talking about right now, which is that if you're out there working for a company and leadership isn't fully adopting AI tools and living and having the culture of that company be aligned with what we're talking about in that second group, like curious, open-minded, what was your message to those people that are working for companies like that? I don't want to say it.
Here's the thing. If you're working at an organization where there's superficial adoption and acceptance of AI, maybe they've got licenses out there and a bunch of tools that they've bought, but there's not deep conviction that this is fundamentally going to disrupt everything. If that doesn't exist, you are risking your own career by staying there. The way you have to think about it is think about the speed of your own career development and your own professional development, and think of the pace of your company's AI development. If your company's ahead and you're behind, well, step it up and figure it out, right? Like build yourself and don't wait for your manager to like sponsor a program or do something for you. You got to invest in yourself or you'll get replaced or left behind. If you are ahead and your company's behind, this is an area where you really have to think hard of, do you want to keep investing your own career and your own market value in this? Because it's dangerous at the speed at which things are changing. The longer you stay in an environment where the environment is obsolete, you're risking yourself because everybody else is likely to move further ahead. And as much as we've valued loyalty and long-term growth in the same environment, this is a time where something massively disruptive is happening. And if you're not taking care of your own growth in that, you're risking something very long-term.
Wake-up call, right? I mean, people
it's a total wake-up call.
Really realize, that's why I'm doing this podcast over and over again and talking with different people from different domains and different capacities. Everyone's saying the same thing. This is on, this is happening, it's not stopping. And it's not just about adoption. It's literally an identity shift. But I get up in the morning and what do I do? And who am I aligning with? Is my company playing this way?
It's also a wake-up call for companies, right? I mean, the single biggest thing that differentiates one company from another is the caliber of your talent. And if your talent walks out the door because you've been slow to have deep conviction around AI or have a clear strategy or the right investment in both technology and people, then you seriously are at risk of having that talent walk out the door. And we're seeing this play out publicly, even with the AI labs, right? They're leaving one environment to go to the other lab. Why? It's not because, just a few dollars more. It's because they're seeing who's on the frontier and who's not.
Right. Yeah, totally. So let me pull back for a moment because you've listened to our show and you know that I also like to talk about people who aren't just working in companies, but are also even looking out into the future in different ways, right? In terms of reinventing, maybe starting a business, maybe doing fractional work, maybe doing something completely different, creatively unlocking the power of AI tools. Are you seeing any of that in your work? Are there people not just transitioning roles? Like, are you seeing people like take your Diagnostic, for example, and like uncover more truth about their identity that maybe was repressed, that maybe they're like, oh man, I've always wanted to be a children's author, but now maybe I can do it. Like, are you seeing stuff like that? I'm curious, outside of just the corporate linear pathway.
Yeah. This is the part that I personally am so excited to see. I think there's something about the industrial era that on one hand created so much progress in society, right? Like, when we moved from farms to factories, the world got better and more prosperous and, we had the automation to make our lives better. But on the other hand, it also put human beings and turned them into human doings. Like we are stuck in this corporate hierarchy with 9-to-5 jobs and beige carpets and cubicles, right? It kind of constrained us in this way where fewer people were willing to take the risk of entrepreneurship or just pursuing their dream or doing something that didn't follow the typical path. That is something that I'm seeing rapidly change. And I'm so excited about that because I do believe we're embarking on what I believe will be the golden age of entrepreneurship. And I think it'll be an era where the ability to turn your idea and bring it to life, that gap is shrinking because you need fewer resources, you need less capital, less headcount, less technical ability. You can actually, if you have something of value to give to the world, you can actually bring that to life a lot easier than was ever possible before, right? So that's exciting. And I think whether it's people getting forced into entrepreneurship because they got laid off or the companies, changed direction, or they're choosing to, pursue a path of freedom and creativity, I think all of that becomes more possible now. And some of the things that do appear from the Diagnostic is people realizing that their zone of genius sits in a place that is actually disconnected from what they're doing in their day jobs. And so, yes, you could either find another role or potentially take a chance. What certainty looks like today is very different from what certainty looked like 5 or 10 years ago. And the
Absolutely.
only certainty that anyone can have is betting on themselves.
Right. I love that. Well said. What about portfolio careers? One of the trends that I'm seeing out there and some of the interviews that we've done on the show is that it's not black or white, right? Like I'm working at my job, I'm moving up, and then I'm also on the side, I'm doing a couple other things. It could be real consulting gigs, it could be creative projects. I think that this is a time where all this in play, especially when you do a diagnostic like yours. And I'm actually curious, we'll get to this later, but I'm curious if that diagnostic is available for individuals, outside of just corporate clients.
It is actually, like we just recently opened it up for anyone to take it and it's free. So if you go to Flipwork, you can take the individual diagnostic and get your personalized report. You'll actually get like a 15-page report that helps you understand a lot about yourself and what to do.
My question was, are you seeing people start to explore, and part of the identity shift, we have it so wired into our culture that it's like one job, one career, retirement, maybe a couple of moves along the way. Now it just feels very different. The way that I'm holding it with my clients and with all the people that I interview here is there's a lot of possibility now. Explore a lot of different things. Like you never know where something's going to pop, right? I'm curious what you're finding in your work, in your diagnostic. Are people able to accept that identity change of it's not just one career, it could be a whole slew of things and possibilities. And that might be my best way to create long-term security.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that at all?
Yes, we're definitely seeing that. But I would look at it from 3 different angles. Number one, given the capability of AI models, what makes humans more valuable is the ability to see things across intersections. Instead of being single-threaded, if you are someone who operates across multiple, you're effectively a polymath. You have a lot of different interests, you have a lot of experiences and perspectives. That actually makes you more unique because it gives you a unique perspective. But in the past, people like that weren't able to fully leverage that. We picked one career, one functional area, and just had to stick to that. And everything else was either hobby or passing fad. We couldn't really monetize that or apply it to create value for other people. So intersectionality actually matters a lot. It's becoming more valuable. Number 2, being stuck in a single-threaded career is actually a massive risk because things are changing so fast. It doesn't matter how much you know. You just can't predict what's going to happen in the future. So if you're betting yourself on only knowing one thing, working with one company in one industry, you're putting yourself at risk. So for that reason, it makes sense to diversify. But number 3, there are so many problems in the world to solve. And, there's the need for more people to create more value in more unique ways. And I think that, to me, becomes almost a moral obligation for everyone to apply themselves in more ways. And it's possible now because AI is making it cheaper, faster, better, easier for people to not only leverage their innate talents, but to also do more in the same amount of time. Today, it's actually possible for someone to have a full-time job, have a side hustle or advisory or consulting gig, be a speaker or be an advisor or, write a newsletter, do all kinds of things, all within the same amount of time that used to take us 5 years ago. So I think from both leverage your innate talent, sort of like a hub and spoke model, like take your innate talent and look at how many different ways can you leverage that, because that actually makes you more valuable. You reduce the risk of being, dominant with only one direction. And third, create more good in the world. That's a moral obligation.
I'm very hopeful about the future, right? Some people in my circle say I'm really naive, that, oh my God, there's going to be a lot of disruption and who knows what's going to happen. And no one knows, right? One thing I've gotten from doing this podcast is no one knows.
Yeah.
No one knows. People may say they know, but really no one does. I mean, this is just evolving at a pace that's lightning speed. We're all doing our best to try to figure it out. As we're kind of coming to the end of this conversation, by the way, I love this talk, Nikki. I love what you're doing. And I would love to be able to share with my audience that diagnostic tool. I think it's really valuable. Are you optimistic about the future though? Like in general, like when you look out into the horizon, do you look at this like this could really make transcendent change on this planet? Like we're really headed for something that maybe could be remarkable, that a lot of the problems that we've been unable to solve are here? Or are you looking at it, well, it could also go the other way? Yeah, I'm just curious. I love to ask that question to folks when they come on. What comes up for you?
Well, I'm an optimist in general, and I believe it's an essential quality to just go through life, stuff happens, but optimism actually is the filter through which you can see more possibility versus not being able to see anything and find your path forward. And with AI, I'm more bullish and more optimistic than I've ever been before, because it truly gives us the ability and infinite intelligence to solve humanity's greatest challenges. What could be better than that? But here's the thing. I don't see it as, even in the doomsday prophecy of like AI is going to supersede human intelligence and, some dystopian future where we have AI overlords. I don't think that's the risk. I think the real risk is AI has tremendous power, and bad actors among us are likely to misuse us and misuse the technology. Therefore, governance and guardrails and policy matter to protect that. But that's natural in any new technology. We always see that, right? Like any new technology, you have tremendous upside, and then you've got some downsides to deal with, and that takes time to figure out. Now, the path from where we are today to getting to this utopian future is going to have some dips, because every dislocation has an impact in the short term. There will be job losses. There will be small businesses that don't survive. There will be, pricing pressure and profit impact and all of those things. But as long as you're someone who is curious and humble and brave and is continuing to reinvent, I promise you the upside is far greater than whatever short-term pain we experience, and that's the thing that we all have to aim for, is our future as human beings, as a collective society, is far more prosperous and abundant for everyone. And we just have to make our way systematically through it with as little pain in the short term as possible.
I love it. Beautiful message. And I just want to recap a couple of things. Number one, it's be in action. Build with AI. Don't sit on the sidelines, right? Like, do the hard work of asking yourself the question, who am I? What is my identity? What could it be going forward? I talk a lot about on this podcast about the value of getting clarity, of creating a vision for yourself, of breaking through the limitations that we've established for ourselves mentally and emotionally, so that way we can dream big again, and like just staying in that lane as much as we can. And like when I get on the call with you, it just brings me back that hope, right? There's so many of us out there that are seeing the possibilities of real positive change. And so I love the work that you're doing. Keep going. We'll be rooting for you big time over here. We'll share that Diagnostics. I think a lot of people should take it, and just really grateful that you took the time today to come on the show and share your reinvention process, because we're on the same team here. So thank you so much, Nikki.
Thanks for having me, Todd. And I love your show, because reinvention is the only differentiator that's going to keep people moving forward.
Boom. Mic drop. All right. Thanks, Nikki.